January 3, 1943. A man fell from 22,000 feet without a parachute. He survived. The fall took approximately 90 seconds. In those 90 seconds, he passed through 4 miles of empty winter air. He was 23 years old. His name was Alan Magee. He was a radio operator on an American B-17 bomber. He had no idea he was about to fall. By 1943, the United States Army Air Forces had been flying bombers over Europe for less than a year. They flew from English airfields, grass runways, Nissen huts, cold mornings before dawn. The 8th Air Force believed in daylight precision bombing. Attack in formation. Hit the target exactly. What this required was flying over heavily defended targets in broad daylight. German anti-aircraft batteries could see every plane clearly, and they were very good at this. The B-17 Flying Fortress was the workhorse of the campaign. 10 men per crew. Pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, radio operator. 5 gunners. Each man had a specific position. Magee was radio operator. His station was just aft of the bomb bay. The plane they flew was called Snap, Crackle, Pop, a name chosen before any of them knew what was coming. They had flown missions before. St. Nazaire would be their 4th. St. Nazaire was a port city on the Atlantic coast of France. The Germans used it for submarine pens. The submarine pens were enormous reinforced concrete structures, nearly impossible to destroy from the air. But the mission was to try, and to disrupt everything around them. Briefing came before dawn on January 3rd. Maps, altitude, formation, expected resistance. Expected resistance was always described in careful language. What it meant was a lot of anti-aircraft guns. The formation took off before sunrise. Dozens of B-17s climbing through English winter cloud. They formed up over the channel. Tight formation, protection against German fighters. 2 hours of flying before they reached the French coast. Cold at altitude, 40 below zero outside the hull. Inside the plane, the crew wore heated flight suits. Oxygen masks above 10,000 feet. Magee sat at his radio station. The intercom was mostly quiet. No one talked more than necessary. They crossed the French coast at 22,000 feet. The sky was clear over the target. Clear skies were good for bombing. Clear skies were also good for anti-aircraft gunners. The German flak batteries around St. Nazaire were among the densest in occupied France. More than 300 guns. Trained crews. They had been doing this for 2 years. When the formation appeared, they opened fire. The sky around the formation turned black with bursting shells. Each black puff was an explosion. Shrapnel moving outward in all directions at tremendous speed. The planes held formation. Dropping altitude or changing course meant a less accurate bomb run. So they flew straight through it. At 22,000 feet. At 200 miles per hour. Through 300 guns. Planes around them were being hit. A burst of flak tore through the right side of their aircraft. The number 4 engine caught fire. Oil pressure dropped immediately. The plane shuddered. The pilot fought for control. They were still over the target. Shrapnel came through the fuselage wall. Magee was hit in the arm. The fire in the engine was spreading. The order came to bail out. Magee reached for his parachute pack. It had been damaged by the same shrapnel that hit his arm. He clipped it on anyway. There was no other option. The plane was going into a dive. Everything was tilting, shaking, burning. He moved toward the door. What happened next is not entirely clear, even from his own account. He was either thrown from the plane by the force of the dive, or he jumped. Either way, he left the aircraft at 22,000 feet over occupied France. He pulled the ripcord. The chute deployed, and immediately shredded. The canopy had been torn apart by shrapnel before it opened. He was falling at terminal velocity, approximately 120 miles per hour. At that speed, 22,000 feet takes about 90 seconds. 90 seconds is a very long time when you are falling toward the ground. Long enough to see the coast, the harbor, the submarine pens below. Long enough to know exactly what was happening. He was not unconscious. Later he would confirm he was fully aware during the fall. The cold at altitude was absolute. But the air was rushing past at terminal velocity. There was nothing to feel. He could see the ground coming. He could see the town below. There was a railway station, a large building with a glass roof. He was falling toward it. He hit the glass roof of the St. Nazaire railway station at terminal velocity. The roof was made of large glass panes in an iron frame, designed for light, not for bodies falling from aircraft. He went through the glass. The glass shattered around him. He hit the floor of the station, and he was still alive. German soldiers inside the station reached him within seconds. They expected to find a body. What they found was a man, injured, barely conscious, but breathing. A German medical officer was called. He arrived and began examining the injuries. Right arm severely damaged, multiple lacerations, shrapnel wounds throughout. But the man was alive. His heart was beating. His lungs were working. The doctor noted the entry point, the shattered glass ceiling above them. He looked up at the hole. He looked back at the man on the floor. Then he ordered immediate medical treatment. The case would need to be documented. German medical reports from that day recorded, American airman, fell from aircraft, height approximately 22,000 feet, no functioning parachute. Survived. There are several theories about what allowed Magee to survive. The glass roof itself, it decelerated him slightly, absorbed some of the kinetic energy. The broken glass showered down with him, which may have disrupted airflow and reduced final velocity marginally. The angle of impact, he may not have hit perfectly flat, which spread the force across more of his body. His exact body position during the fall, arms, legs, posture, all affected the physics. None of these explanations are satisfying on their own. The honest answer is, he should have died. The physics said he should have died. Something in the combination of factors produced an outcome that had almost no precedent. He was taken to a German military medical station and treated. The Germans who treated him knew exactly what he had survived. They treated him with corresponding seriousness. He spent several weeks recovering from his injuries before being transferred to a prisoner of war camp. The camp held hundreds of Allied airmen, downed crews from bombed-out planes. Magee said almost nothing about his fall to the other prisoners. He was a quiet man. He did not elaborate on things. He recovered. He waited. The war continued around him. In 1944, the D-Day landings changed the situation on the Western Front. Allied forces pushed east through France. German positions that had seemed permanent began to collapse. By early 1945, the camps in Western Germany were being liberated. American ground forces reached Magee's camp in the spring of 1945. He was repatriated. He went home. He returned to the United States without significant ceremony. Many men who survived extraordinary things came home and said nothing about it. Magee was one of them. He went back to civilian life. He married. He worked. He lived quietly. For years, almost no one knew what had happened to him over Street Nazir. The story was documented in military records. It was known to the Air Force. But Magee himself did not seek attention. He was not a man who talked about Street Nazir at dinner. His injuries from the fall stayed with him. His right arm was never fully right again. But he was alive. Most of the men who flew those missions were not. In the 8th Air Force bombing campaign, the casualty rate was among the highest of any American military service in the war. Researchers looking at survival statistics from extreme falls have studied cases like Magee's for decades. Falls from 20,000 feet and above without functioning parachutes have an almost zero survival rate. Almost is not the same as zero. There are a handful of documented cases, maybe a dozen across the entire war, where someone survived. Magee is the best documented, the most verified, the one where the physics are hardest to explain. He lived in the United States. He grew old. He gave a few interviews late in life, when historians finally tracked him down. He answered questions carefully and precisely, the way a radio operator answers questions. He did not dramatize. He described what he remembered. He said he had been lucky. Lucky is one word for it. Alan Magee died on December 20th, 2003. He was 84 years old. He had lived 60 years after a fall that should have ended in approximately 90 seconds. The Street Nazir railway station where he landed still exists. The glass roof has been replaced. There is no plaque, no marker. The floor where he hit has been walked on by millions of people who have no idea. Somewhere above that floor, for miles straight up, the January sky is still there.